Hey everyone, I'm Josh Rothis. I'm the publisher of Sublunary Editions, and welcome to a very special co-hosted event with our friends at Spurl Editions. We'll call this Spurlunary for the sake of expediency. We're going to talk about two new books from Sublunary Editions: "The Whore" by Márcia Barbieri, translated by Adrian Minckley. That came out a few weeks ago on March 7th. And we'll be up first, and then we'll be talking with MS Co. about her new novel, The Formation of Calcium, from Spurl Editions. It's out on Tuesday. Eva Richter from Spurl will be in conversation with her. We'll have readings. It's going to be a grand old time. So this will be a little bit different than our normal thing, but I think it's going to be fun. And thank you all for coming and joining on a Saturday in at least increasingly nice Northern Hemisphere. So I'm actually going to start with a reading. I'm going to read a bit from The Whore. We're going to talk to Adrian, and Marcia has also joined us. So she'll be taking some questions in translation via Adrian. So thank you, Adrian, for being both subject of interview and interpreter in one go. And then Adrian will read us out with The Whore, and then we'll turn it over to our friends at Spurl. I'm going to start. So The Whore, and we'll talk about this, is a 156-page paragraph. This is a solid block of text. There is no point at which it relents enough to merit a line break, and so it makes it challenging to pick a spot to read from. So we're going to go from early on in the book, and I will read until I am tired or nauseous, whichever comes first. Nauseated. My mother taught me that. We're going to start on the bottom of page 8. Read along if you like. No sane person has ever truly found happiness. I, on the other hand, opted for whispers and vagrancy. I would boil my clothes in the yard, my vision blurred by the soot from the wood stove, and throw everything in a large saucepan because I thought that by doing so, I could free myself from the hassle of an ailment meant for dogs. But with time, I came to understand that madness was not contagious, that it was only sad, the kind of sadness that makes your bones ache in winter. I don't like the cold. It makes me think about uncomplicated acts like dunking my head in ice water, and the heat makes me lazy and irrational. Don't you think there'd be less war if the world was hotter? Are there wars in tropical places? I don't think so. As far as I know, there are only revolutions and they always fail, just simmer off in the heat. Maybe we only die from epidemics. Maybe our only cross to bear is the proliferation of insects. You don't need to push it. I already told you. It was a blood-stained femur. That's all I remember. I can't say if it was human or not. I'd done a lot of lines that night, and when you're high, things take on unexpected proportions. I have a bad memory. Life teaches us it's better to have a weak mind and wilted mouth, just enough memories and words to keep the species going, than here you come asking me to remember everything in perfect detail. Details are for pussies. Around these parts, living men have dead men's mouths, and they stink like them too. It's better left alone. Birds that sing too loud end up in cages. We don't have time for things like that here. Forget it. I don't remember the exact position of the limbs or the angles the legs made with the moon. There were tibias and patellas of every size, but mostly stunted. A grotesque sight. I imagine that every type of displeasure was a flat angle, while anguish was obtuse, skinny, anorexic. The crooked geometry of those bright objects intrigued me. No, they weren't fetuses, they were a pile of dirty laundry, but in the dark, from afar, I don't know, anything is possible in the blind man's land. I also remember a guttural sound, like there was an animal being sacrificed, but I didn't smell any blood. An antelope, a goat, a horse. Don't be so stupid. How would I know? How could I possibly made out horns and all that chaos? I assumed it had hooves because I heard some sort of galloping. Oh, cut me a break. There's no point. I don't know the difference between an antelope and a deer. Forget it. Let's move on. We don't want to get off track, do we? Yes, enough. I've never been lucid, although sometimes the light gets in my eyes. I'm not sure if I'm cross-eyed or if the world is slanted. I've gutted more men than fish because fish are rare and contested, and I don't regret it. I'm not complaining, don't get it twisted. It's a retelling, that's all. Just a ridiculous recounting of the facts that I saw or thought I saw or saw with a certain measure of difficulty. Better still, if you really want to know, I've had a few moments of weakness. I've never stopped to save a man, but I have felt bad for a few fish, usually the largest and most colorful ones because they had more gumption, more stamina. For a while, I even thought some of them might be able to survive on land, developed shells, claws, lungs. I'm sure I was wrong, though I never followed up any of their whereabouts. I just figured they were dead when I saw them bobbing in the surf. There's a lot more empty space in a man than there is in an invertebrate. I don't understand why they possess pulmonary function when gills could get you there, no problem. Have you ever seen a man out of breath? What about a frog? What a waste it was to throw a backbone in to hold up the flaccid human soul. I've got more faith in the harpoon than I do in the net. The dawn blankets the night in viscera. A fistula erupts in my abdomen. I wish that philosopher motherfucker was here to talk about pain, about being, about metaphysics. His calculations left weak markings around the hole, hypotenuse leg, square edge, right angle, and he doesn't know how to get out anymore. Isn't sure how to shirk this one. I don't understand a word, a single grunt that comes out of his stupid mouth, but I do get distracted by his babbling and by the way his lips move. I'm amazed at what half a dozen books can do to an idiot's brain. His stupidity excites me, his words leaking out like slobber, a dead lizard lodged in his trachea. There's a pit lodged in my chest that takes up half my breast, and my breasts are synonymous with exile. I touch the nipples with the tips of my fingers, feel them harden. I caress the knots in the wood. I feel I'm an atom piece of the soul in those inanimate objects. Tongue cocked, I take a taste of the wood that time enjoyed. I don't have much to say about the things I saw. What do you mean? You're saying I'm guilty because I was an eyewitness? You don't find that a little ridiculous? I'm an accomplice to a crime I didn't even know happened? And why would I have harbored a criminal? Am I worried? Why would I be? Worry is a loaded gun aimed at our temples and ready to blow. I don't lose sleep over it. People who don't sleep die faster. Oh, quit being pedantic. Nothing like that happened. I wouldn't risk my life to save someone else's. I don't believe in heroes. I'm that shitty kind of woman that's already stopped believing in anything. I know the muscle flesh was red and elastic. It was stretchy and slipped right off the bone. It was one of the strangest scenes I've ever witnessed. Not that I'm a saint. Far from it. But there was something scary about it all. All right, I'm going to need a second to recover from that. Adrian, this was an absolutely relentless book to read. It goes by so very quickly. How did you approach getting into this from a translation standpoint? What was your first impression of the book when you read it? Was this, did it immediately seem like a daunting task for you, or did you only realize the magnitude of it once you had gotten in there a bit?
I think right off the bat, I was pretty terrified by it. I started working on it like I had not even gotten a book contract at that point. So I was like really new to translating. And I think I translated like 2 paragraphs and then didn't work on it again for like 8 months. So I was just like, I don't even know how to maybe speak this language after reading this book. But after a while, I think I just got into it episodically, and that helped a lot. There's no like without any paragraph breaks, you can't stop anywhere in particular. So I just had to sort of find sections where there was something similar to an event happening, and I had to sort of separate those out and then do them all separately, basically.
Something similar to an event. I like that. If you could ask Marcia, what was the composition process like of a book that was this relentless in prose form?
Marcia's internet just took a crap, so she's not here right now.
Oh, all right. Well then, this is what happens when you try to do international events on Wi-Fi. So how did you stumble upon this book? Was this from your time at Rochester? Did someone recommend this to you? How did you get your hands on this particular work?
I read a review of it in maybe the Songfellow book review or something like that. It was pretty brief, but I generally like things about bodies, so I was pretty excited just by reading the description. And then Marcy was nice enough to send me all of her books pretty much immediately. So that worked out pretty easily. But no, most people I know that work in Brazilian fiction in translation have never even heard of her. So it was really sort of happenstantial that this worked out at all.
The book certainly seems to have quite a devoted following in Brazil, just from what Marcia posts on Instagram. People recreating the original cover, which features the silhouette of a scantily clad woman looking out the window over a desolated landscape. So you mentioned themes of the body. Certainly, the body is very central to this. Marcia, I think, writes in a very philosophical way. She has, I think, some of that grounding. But she really wants to take these ideas, and throughout the horror, Annuncia is pontificating on very large ideas, but they're always grounded back in in the body. And so this is the first book of a trilogy that's in English one would call the Body Trilogy. How does this develop between the horror and the last of it? In your experience, having read, I don't know if you've read the full thing yet, but how do you see her kind of developing these ideas of locating these big ideas, but in the viscera of fluids and tendons and flesh? She mentioned so many of those in just that brief passage.
Yeah, I haven't read the third one yet. I'm mostly done with the second one, but I know that they're unrelated. They're related thematically. It's a triptych, but they don't have the same characters or anything. But they're all sort of about ideas of how bodies are possessed and who possesses bodies. So this one is about a woman possessing her own body. The second one is about a man possessing a dead woman's body. The third one is about someone possessing a narrative. So it's a narrative told from multiple different angles. So I think ownership has a lot to do with all three books in a way.
When you were reading, I don't know how much other touchstones came to mind. I wanted to ask, Marcia about her influences. Certainly, like Hilda Hilst came to mind when reading this. Were there other stylistic touchstones, people you thought might have been integral to the writing of the book?
I think she's trying to get in. Is she in the
Oh,
waiting?
I don't see her in the list. I'll keep an eye out. I realized I wasn't watching it while I was reading because multitasking.
Yeah, Hilda Hilst was also my main one. There's in one of Hilda Hilst's books, she has like a whole passage about her butthole, and that was a big inspiration for me in working on this book. That would be my main one. People love to compare her to Clarice Lispector, but I think that's mostly because that's the only other Brazilian woman writer anybody knows. Hilda was my big one for sure, and I think Marcia would say the same thing.
Yeah, if anyone, as you said, I think the Lispector translate or comparisons are purely because that's the only other Brazilian woman writer anyone knows. If anyone hasn't read Hilda Hilst, please rectify that. She has a wonderful novella called With My Dog Eyes Out Through Melville House, and then Nightboat has done 3 of her books, which very much blend highbrow, lowbrow prose, poetry all in one, and then Cohen Press also has a volume of her pure poetry. Highly recommend. Very much, I think, a touchstone for Marcia, but she's doing something. Do you get the sense of her as being ever intentionally transgressive? Because I think people have had very strong reactions to this book. It was actually a lot of fun. We were talking before everyone joined about going to AWP, and this being, of course, our newest title was on the table in front of me, and people would pick it up and say, do you think I would like this? And I say, read the first page. And the reaction, we sold a lot of them because people are sickos. But it was very telling to get that first page reaction to people. But do you get the sense of her? Is she in a tradition of transgression at all?
The funny thing about talking to Marcia is that often she doesn't seem as weird as I expected her to be. These books are so strange, and she's such a nice, like, sort of unassuming person. When I would ask her questions, like, I would have her read certain passages to me in Portuguese because I wanted to get the rhythm down, and she would be saying the most like obscene things, but in this cute little voice, like, all the time. Anytime I asked her a question, she would just sort of be like, well, that's what it says. I don't know. Like, she's not into explaining what she's doing necessarily. So I think she might be inherently transgressive, but I don't know if she would ever admit to that being a project.
I think she is back with us if you'd like to pass that on to her.
Okay. Oh, she's gone again. No, she's back.
She's back.
Márcia.
Oi. Acho que eu consegui voltar. Mas caiu exatamente, caiu a energia e a internet. Voltou a energia, mas a internet demorou para voltar.
Tá bem. O Josh quer saber se você se vê num projeto transgressivo mesmo, ou não.
Eu não entendi a pergunta. Se eu me vejo...
Eu vou teclar aqui. Cadê você? Ele quer saber se o seu projeto de escrito é um que você vê como transgressivo.
Ah, entendi. Eu não estava entendendo transgressivo.
É.
É engraçado, assim, eu não, tá dando, você consegue me entender? Consegue, né? Que onde a gente conversou, acho que você consegue melhor. Inicialmente eu não via como, eu não achava que ele estava transgredindo muita coisa, principalmente em termos eróticos, pornográficos, que fez muito barulho nesse sentido. Eu recebia muitas mensagens super machistas, coisas assim que eu não imaginei que fosse acontecer, porque eu pensei, depois da história do olho do Patai, eu não imaginei que uma escrita, teve a Anaïs Nin também, se falar em mulher, teve a Hilda Hilst no Brasil, então eu não imaginava que falar sobre o corpo ou falar do sexo de forma mais direta fosse algo transgressivo, mas eu percebo hoje que ainda é. Principalmente depois que eu escrevi, comecei a publicar, comecei a participar das feiras.
She's saying that initially when she was writing this, she had no sense that what she was doing was transgressive, that talking about sex or talking about bodies in this way would be something anybody would really take note of in that way, until she started getting a lot of really sexist messages, and she started going to book fairs and doing publicity. She was saying that she thought of herself in the lineage of Hilda Hills, so she thought that would be totally acceptable to a lot of people, but then her experience was that a lot of people were not into it.
Interesting. Going back a question to composition, I was curious. Well, we'll start with this. For her, did she conceive of the trilogy before she began writing, or at what point did she realize she had more to say on this particular theme of the body and possession of the body?
Eu não, tá dando para estar? Eu não escrevi inicialmente para ser uma trilogia. Eu primeiro comecei com a puta, e a minha ideia seria, a ideia sim era falar sobre o corpo, mas para mim terminaria nesse livro, na puta mesmo. E a ideia da trilogia foi mais por uma necessidade minha também, porque alguns personagens começaram a voltar e eu senti que não tinha acabado, e eu senti que eu poderia falar, ainda continuar com o mesmo tema, mas em outra história, mas continuar com a mesma temática, porque eu achei que não tinha esgotado todos os assuntos sobre o tema.
She started with just the horror. That was the only book she intended to write. And then after she finished it, she had some of those same personality, or the same characters coming back to her. So she realized that she hadn't said everything she needed to. So that's how the trilogy came to be.
Adrian, back to you for a sec. So we talked a little bit about the challenges of translating something so unrelenting, just in terms of the speed of the prose, the narrative kind of shifting between one scene and another, the surrealistic language. Outside of that, what were outside of all of that, what were some of the challenges in really just, I mean, translating a kind of filthy book in places, but also one that had a lot of nuance to the language? What were some of the, I mean, I can tell stories about the DM conversations we've had about spellings of various things.
Yes, I learned so much about grammar with you. I think my approach to this book is similar to my approach to all the books that I've worked on at this point, is that I'm looking for patterns. So about vaginas and dicks, or about anything else, there's patterns that help you track what's going on. So I pretty much just relied on that. With Marcia, a lot of the meaning is there, but it's fun because you get to sort of play it fast and loose, because it's more about the rhythm, the pacing, than it is necessarily about one word versus another word. So I got to sort of have these like larger maps in my mind, but then just sort of feel how it sounded as it was happening.
Let's see, I'm checking on time. Maybe we'll do one more for Marcia, which is the question about how the composition process went for it. Again, I'm always fascinated by how people can like break at the end of the day when writing something with a speed of this. So how did the composition go for her? Was it quick, or is she very much a gets each bit right before she can move on kind of writer?
Não foi muito rápido. Tá tanto para escutar? Eu não sei se eu sou perfeccionista, mas eu escrevo normalmente muito devagar. E eu não tenho uma continuação da história linear. Normalmente eu escrevo, eu sento para escrever e eu começo a escrever por qualquer frase do meio do texto. Não tem uma linearidade, não é linear, né? Eu acho que eu demorei em torno de 2 anos para escrever, mas também tem a coisa de eu não só escrever, porque aí eu trabalho, aí não tenho um tempo, né, específico. Eu tento todo dia sentar um pouquinho e escrever. Mas isso, eu não sento mais do que 1 hora por dia para escrever. Até porque eu acho que ficar muito tempo no texto, não sei, eu não gosto. Eu gosto de ficar de 40 minutos a 1 hora por dia no texto.
Você começou no começo e foi até o fim, ou não?
Não, eu escrevo pelos meios. Eu vou escrevendo pelos meios. Cada dia eu começo num lugar diferente. Como a puta não era um parágrafo só, então eu começava em qualquer lugar, basicamente. Mas nos outros livros eu também faço isso. Mesmo que tenha capítulos, dependendo do dia, eu acho que eu estou mais propensa a escrever sobre aquele personagem ou sobre aquele capítulo específico.
It took her about 2 years to write it, but she also only writes between 40 minutes to an hour every day, partially because she works, but also because she doesn't feel like she wants to sit with something for very long. She doesn't get that much out of it. She didn't go this beginning to end. She would just sort of come in at a point and start at more of like a feeling how she was feeling, and then going from there.
Adrian, do you want to read a bit and take us out on the horror, and then we'll turn it over to Megan, Eva, and the Spurl crew?
Okay. The throat is a rough sketch of a pussy, and my pussy has bunions. Put your hand here, you can feel them. Every day they ram a hard cock up our asses, and they take it out right before we come. I count my interrupted intercourse in the cracking of the days. The hangover tears burst the mornings. Annunciation. Again they shout. Again the echo replies. Annunciation. I like the wetlands and the intermittent rivers that are sometimes deserts. Promise, the lingering expectation of rain. Lizard dwellings, children walking in the depths. We grow and float on the surface. Aerated matter. The beetles whirring. A boil on God's perfection. Crab eyes scare me. They're movable, human eyes, and accusational. Not that I'm prone to guilt. That guilty feeling that drives people to charity was not a trait I inherited. I have the instinctive hunger of an animal. I advocate for monsters. I perform vivisections on rabid dogs. I like to watch their hearts pumping. I don't believe in first-time offenders. There's no one to run to. Each judges their own flesh. Horses can only hear the sound of their own hooves. To each the salvation of their own skin. Mine is singular, a fly roost, a larval respite. What were you imagining? Someone asking permission and clearing away your wreckage? Someone licking your burial shroud? Watching your every move? Here, eyes are two hollow pits in your face. Here, all the dead are buried nude. Their muscles dislocate from their bones, torn like tattered elastic. Their clothing is given to the youth and their jewels stolen by our most promising minds. You don't take them with you. Let's make that real clear. You don't deceive the devil. Walk without moving your feet out the mud. You won't sink, trust me. Your soul carries the weight of those who are unconscious. Scream all you want. Sound doesn't travel in a vacuum. The only thing you can do is count your words, lick the sperm leaking from your abdomen, feed off yourself. The pustules still spread rapidly across your body. You'll soon give birth. You might not agree with me now, but afterwards, you'll lick your pussy, my pussy, so sorry, to avoid me from being right. I wake up and keep the windows closed. Silverfish sleep between the slats. Those tiny creatures have always intrigued me. They've been like that for 30 years, like an unseeing eye on a suicidal man's face. Your wounds keep spreading the cavity throughout your body, the hollowness of your soul. I can't do anything for you. The bandages are useless. The soot from inanimate objects sticks during orbit. The atoms divide but never dissipate. Immorality is in the proton, neuron, nanomaterial of the rock. The moss, a living being, animate, green, the flower's preamble, scrutinizes but doesn't tear the rock's skin. If you could cleave it, you'd see there's nothing there but a viscous and lonely cavity. If you stuck your tongue in the gap, you'd know there's no way to masturbate it. No one will help, things are different now. You're still naive, seeking responses in an ancient world that came apart easy like poorly knit fabric. Even though our population is negligible, we'll still have to endure epidemics and there's no hope for a vaccine. Our hands are tied. We don't have any doctors to dole out miracle injections. Antibiotics are no longer available. We could die of tetanus at any time. We'd have to return our hands to the sky and clamor for some deity. Anyone will do. A heaven, a sun, a tree, a dismembered body. You want me to call my mother over? She's been over there, seated in that chair since the day she birthed me. I can ask my mom to bless you. She's a healer. All she has to do is drink some tea and go into a trance. Commune with the sacred. Here, insanity is a privilege. In another time, the neighbors would have locked their doors, called the police, and sent her straight to the asylum. But now, the few neighbors we have left can't imagine what an asylum might be. My mother has regained her prestige, and sometimes I even forget how much I used to hate her, how much I used to cry during her schizophrenic outbursts. I know it's not much to a philosopher, but for those who still believe strongly in the self, I don't find it too unreasonable to believe in prayers and palm fronds. How many tomes did you have to read to not believe in anything? People who are atheists for political reasons are ridiculous. Just because they read a well-written text, you're a test tube skeptic. It's not genuine. It wasn't life that made you a non-believer. It was your footnote conversations. The scribbles at the end of the page. Which of your philosophers saved you from Rian or gonorrhea? Syphilis feasted on your brain and you didn't even notice. Couldn't tell how big the hole was. Even sick, you were snobbish, kept speaking in incomprehensible dialects, didn't want to mix with the large and ignorant masses. You used to say that women held the semen of misfortune. That's why you were chaste for years. And you were right, the pussy is a putrid hole. We carry the germ of humanity in our tubes. Nothing that multiplies can be innocent. You had infected milk in your cock tube, but you pretended not to see it. Your eyes were addicted to contemplating distant objects. The outside was the primary subject of your misguided theses. But did you take a look at your dick?
Adrian, thank you so much. And Marcia, obrigado. Thank you guys so much. We're going to turn it over to Eva now. Eva will get us started with part 2.
Okay, thank you. That was terrific. That was really cool. So great to hear from you. And it's really wonderful to be able to collaborate like this for the Sublunary, the Spurlunary festivities, which is something that happens every year, and it's always great. So We're mostly going to talk about MS Co's new novel, Formation of Calcium now, and we're really excited about it because it's the first American new novel that we've published. And so we're branching out a little bit with some new writing, and we're just excited for Formation of Calcium. It's going to be out in a few days officially, but it's already out and available for purchase on our website. Hopefully it's at a bookstore near you if you live on one of the coasts. And it's also on the Asterism site that Josh wonderfully set up. Oh, thank you. So MSCO is going to start with a reading, I think, although she said that it's going to be a little bit different. So I'm excited to see what she has in store for us. And also, you know, you are all clearly very committed to new literature. So hopefully you have some questions for her afterwards, so you don't have to just hear me talk for 20 minutes after she reads. So get ready for some hard-hitting questions. We're going to take MSCO down after she gives her reading. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to say thanks to Spurl X Sublunary and the Museo de Arte Zapopan. I'm in the museum right now in Zapopan, Jalisco, Mexico. Thanks for not having any rules against this. It's really cool to be in a reading with both the writer and translator of a book. I've never been to a reading before that had both. So it's nice to be here with Márcia and Adrian. I'm going to be reading from my book, Formation of Calcium. It's out on Tuesday officially. And in this section of the book, our narrator, Mary Ellen Marsh, is impersonating her best friend, Natalie, for reasons I'm not going to get into right now. And she is going to meet Natalie's internet boyfriend. One sec. Never before did I realize quite how much makeup can transform a face. Mary Ellen used to wear a light pink lip gloss, a touch of mascara, maybe some filler for her eyebrows. Phoebe wore minimal beachy makeup, and Natalie used makeup like it was batter. Full foundation, thin powder over top, maroon or scarlet, lipstick, eyeliner, eyeshadow, something called eye magic that I found in the front of the drawer, blush, eyebrow, pencil, the works. Once I had completed her routines, making sure to smear concealer into the deep lines under my eyes. Because though I had finally snatched a few hours of sleep, it wasn't enough to undo the black trenches of worry and insomnia that have dug themselves in on either side of my nose. I stared into the mirror for a long time. I looked just like her. Really did. Blue Dong sent Natalie a message. AA flight 309 tomorrow, 3:42 p.m. See what passenger pickup, my angel. I did not want a boyfriend, and now it seemed like I had no choice but to inherit this one. If I tried to cancel our plans at this point, say I was sick, it would look suspicious. Plus, in my experience, men usually wouldn't listen to such a request anyway. They would just as likely board the plane in the name of chivalry and try to take care of you with a microwave can of soup and a sexy movie on the TV. I wrote back, KK, look for me in neon yellow dress. Hashtag God's plan. It seemed like the reply that Natalie would give, and I was Natalie, by the by. Her username for everything is Super Sponge Royalty. Guess I'm stuck with it. I started to look through the messages that the two of them had sent one another over the past few months so I could get a feel for their relationship. Were they sweet? Snarky? Did they make inside jokes? One of the first things I saw disturbed me thoroughly. It was a snap of Natalie's Udenda, which was fine, I have one myself. But the unsettling bit was that it was imprinted with a little tattoo, 3 green olives on a toothpick. A preferred garnish for martini. Cute, but terrible for me. When we got down to it, would Thu notice that I did not have this tattoo? Surely he would. He had replied to the snap with a drawing of Homer Simpson on the telephone screaming, hurry, operator, get me the number to 911. As I scanned through their little bleeps and bloops back and forth to each other, he mentioned it time and again. He loved those olives, he wanted to suck them dry, suck the little pimentos right out of them, lick their salty. I stopped reading because I had to go get a tattoo. I pulled into the first shop I saw and explained to the artist what I wanted. I gave him a little drawing of it I'd made myself. You got any others? He asked. And I said, other ones? And he said, tattoos. And I said, no. Wow, just going straight to the source then, he said, and told me to take off my pants. It hurt something awful, like stepping down on a rape and having that rape slip up and bonk you on the noggin, only my pain was lower. After he finished, he leaned back and handed me a mirror. The green of the olives was a little too helly, and the tilt of the toothpick looked slightly off, but overall, I didn't think Sue would question it. The skin all around the tattoo was red, though, and I asked the man why. He said it would be red and puffy for a few days, and then he handed me an instruction sheet on how to care for it. He said, keep it covered so that it's not brushing against your clothes or anything else. No, I said, is there a way for it to go back to looking normal? I can't have it being all like a cherry jubilee. But he just shrugged and sold me a pricey jar of ointment. I paid for the tattoo with Natalie's credit card, and everything went through just fine. That was yesterday, and my skin is tender there and still red. Now it's a big day, and I only have 2 hours before Sue's plane shows up. So I'd better put on the final touches on the house and myself, and maybe watch a few more of these little animated pictures they send one another, things like cats clawing their way out of the bathtub over a caption, Mondays, or penguins barking up fish next to, learned it from my mom. I don't understand their relationship, but then that's kind of my deal with everyone. Male parents had this routine that always confused me. My mom would set a glass of ice in front of my paw, and he would take out the chips one by one and press them to the back of her hand until they melted. They'd do this summer, winter, whenever. They wouldn't talk or even look at each other, but they both had goosebumps up their forearms. I never did get it. Natalie, you slick feather, you. Turns out, Sue is more than a boyfriend. He's a business partner to boot. In 1 hour, I found out more about the bingo scheme than I had from Natalie in all our weeks of living together. Wait, I'll start from the top. I want to remember this, just how it went. While Sue was here, I couldn't record, of course. We were sharing a bedroom. So it all began with meeting him at the airport. When I picked him up, he handed me a bundle of flowers. He must have carried them all the way on the plane and guarded them from suitcases and rude passengers. I've never been on a plane, but I've seen in movies and such how they jostle you. Bien, hello, you're stunning, he said as soon as he saw me parked at the curb. So much for the anxiety that had turned my cuticles into ragged red scraps. There was no flash of doubt in his eyes, and his passing thought that I wasn't the same woman he'd been talking to. I dressed in neon yellow, my makeup was impeccable. He called me by the nickname I see in our messages to each other. I had no idea what it meant, but it sounded nice coming out of his mouth. He was about half an inch shorter than me with wire-rimmed glasses, a little too narrow for the shape of his face, and he turned bright red just before he said, the plane must have landed me in heaven because you are some kind of angel. Hi, I said, and wrapped my arms around him. It's so nice to meet, darling. This was my nickname for him, but it felt awkward. I didn't like the shape of it at all on my tongue. He held me stiffly as if trying to keep our crotch areas at a safe distance, and then he tossed his tiny suitcase into the back seat and hopped in. I followed. It's like I've stepped into a video game, he said. Seeing you in real life is just so neat. I could not remember the last time someone had told me a thing like that. Your voice sounds different in person, more rich or something. It's lovely, it really is. Well, I said, you know how microphones and those electronic waves everything goes through distorts sound. Makes it tinny. He agreed and asked how he sounded to me, and I said, different. We drove down the highway raised above the marshy ground, and Theo exclaimed over the landscape. Look at that leggy bird, he said. And are there really crocodiles here? And there's the ocean. I caught a glimpse of it. Look. He kept pushing his glasses up the bridge of his nose, and his excited energy made him seem very young, though he was about my age. At the condo, we carried Thu's things inside, and then stood in the kitchen. I'll mix martinis, I said, because I knew it was what Natalie would have done. I dropped the ice into the pitcher, the vodka, the olives, and their juice. vermouth, and I used a long silver spoon to stir everything together. I started to feel like I was in a movie, what with Sue staring at me with adoring eyes. And maybe it was because my head felt sort of fuzzy from lack of sleep, or because I was wearing a pretty dress that I'd found in the closet with its tag still on, or because for the first time I actually liked the taste of a martini when I brought the cold spoon to my mouth. But I started right then to actually feel like Natalie. Thank you.
Oh my God, that was so cool. That's a terrific. Also, I think you are Natalie. You have become
Yeah, the book is definitely about changing the self, doubling the self. And so I thought this exhibit, which is Ojos Obsidianos by Donna Juanca, I thought it was a good place to read.
Absolutely. I'm glad no one got in your way. That was amazing. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about you and a little bit about the book? Maybe some, yeah, just a little bit of background on both of those things. Thank you.
Sure. I wrote the book I think in 2020. I think I wrote it in 2020. And then I put it away for a little and submitted to Spurl. I think that you were the first place I sent it. I sent my first book to you as well, and you declined it. That's all right. And I also think that Christoph is here, who published my first book with Flash, which was a really great experience. So then after, having an agent and losing the agent because they didn't like what I wrote, it was too dirty. I've really found that, small presses are a great home for my work and what I do. And I like working with people, the people who are really passionate about, writing and editing. Yeah, small presses do love those. Yeah. And let's see, I grew up in Las Vegas, outside of Las Vegas, really close to Hoover Dam. And I live in Guadalajara, Mexico now. It's the second largest city in Mexico. It's got a lot of cool cultural stuff.
Okay, cool. And we are now also based in Las Vegas. So hopefully next time you're here, we'll set up a reading and everyone needs to fly out to Las Vegas and lose all their money and listen to MS Co read from her book again. Far less cool location, I'm sure. So where did some of the inspiration for Mary Ellen Washi's super unique character and voice come from? I mean, she's just so compelling and she just does the worst things that you're always rooting for her. I am. She's hilarious and just
Thank you. So originally I got the idea for this book from one of those Florida Man articles. So, like Florida Man does some ridiculous, horrible things. Like Florida Man gets a pet alligator for toddler. So it was a story like that I read and just kind of kept in the back of my mind for a few years. And when I get something stuck in my head and I keep thinking about it, that's usually what I end up writing about. So, developing her voice was difficult. I always write a very fast and sloppy first draft, and then I evaluate what I have and try to turn that into I try to really create the character after I've written the piece. So the strange phrases that she uses, the words, and those all came later in a second draft.
Had you heard people using kind of phrases like that, or did you more create her sort of weird language specifically for her?
I made up most of it, but it was based off of weird phrases that my partner's grandma says. So things like that, but with you know, a little different, more specific to her.
Okay, and that's one of the neatest things. Mary Ellen Washi, the narrator, who speaks into a tape recorder throughout the whole book, has all these bizarre but perfect turns of phrases that sound like something someone's odd grandma might say, but I don't think actually are. So that's fascinating to hear. I just want to see if anyone, I've got more questions, of course, but I want to see if anyone has questions right now for MSCO before I just keep going forward.
Well, Eva, I actually kind of want to turn this on you, since you made such a point of saying this is a book written by a living American author, and this is the first time you guys have done that. What was it that said not only this is a great book, but this would be a great Spurl book?
Well, I don't know what a great Spurl book is. I mean, if you look at what we've done, it's all over the place, so I don't think it exists. It really was just we love her book so much, and it's such a strange piece, and it's so compelling. It does have echoes of a little bit of the Hollywood memoirs we've done, like The Big Love and I Am Not Ashamed, in terms of these super out there voices who are just so who just know that they're right and they're just moving forward. And that's a really neat thing about the narrator of The Formation of Calcium, is she knows she's right. She knows she has to do what she has to do. And that does sort of flow with those kind of characteristics. I'm trying to think. But yeah, I don't think there is a Spurl book. Every time we try to do like a literary fair, people want to know what is Spurl, and I don't know, just pick whatever book seems like it has a good cover and see if you like it. So let's see. So the tape recordings, I think, in your book are really interesting. The whole book is basically tape recordings of this woman talking. And she even goes so far as to play other pieces of audio into the tape so the tape can record it. And she'll also read text message conversations she has into this tape recorder, so it's all there. And it's as if she's trying to create a permanent record of the truth so she can move forward with her life. So I was wondering, how do you think Mary Ellen Washi's efforts to record this truth on the tape clash with what's really going on with her life and how things are actually going for her?
The unreliable narrator has always been really important to me. Sometimes I write in third person, but I mostly write in first person because I find it fascinating to inhabit somebody different from me, create a different voice from mine. And so Mary Ellen is not super in touch with reality. But I think that the challenge of conveying to readers what might actually be going on versus what she's telling into her tape recorded diaries, that juxtaposition is really fascinating. And I think that it's one of the most important parts of the book. Like, who are we to ourselves? What's the story we've created for ourselves? And why would we want to present a certain self permanently, recorded on tape, potentially for somebody else to see or to guard for our own memory?
Yeah, definitely. And so you kind of also touched about the Florida man and how that was a bit of an inspiration. Those insane people in Florida will do what people in Florida do. Have you been to Florida, or is it more just this mythical land where anything can happen for you?
Probably the latter. I have been to Florida, but only for AWP camp. So I didn't do a bunch of Florida. My first book was also set in Florida a lot, and I think that I'm obsessed with the weirdness of it. I've read a lot of history books about Florida, and the way that people have tried to take over the land, swamp, draining swamps and creating McMansions, and the people who don't live in those spaces. Anything can happen in Florida, and it does.
Well, it definitely does in the formation of calcium, which is really
Yeah.
hard to, by the way, describe or write a synopsis of without giving spoilers away. So
Yeah, I agree.
semi-impossible, but that's okay. The very first tape recording / chapter, you have to pretend doesn't happen. So what's a literary or film influence that folks might be surprised to hear has shaped your book, and maybe how?
Surprised? I'm not sure. Some of the pieces that have inspired me. I love Lolita, one of my favorite books. That's the ultimate unreliable narrator. It deals with a lot of subversive themes through the voice of someone who doesn't find that to be subversive, and I think that's really interesting. I also really enjoyed Lydia Millet's Mermaids in Paradise, the voice of that narrator. I read that book right before I wrote this one. That narrator really spoke to me. And also Spurl books. I love Big Love. That's a great book, really strong voice. I don't know if any of those are surprising, but
No, I mean, they make sense. I definitely wouldn't, I guess, except for Big Love, which I mentioned earlier, but that wasn't an influence on this book. I think it's just shares themes, right?
yeah.
That book is insane. But yeah, Lolita, that makes sense. I should read the Lydia Millet. That sounds awesome.
So yeah, it's a really good book.
What would be the worst thing a reader might take away from reading your book? If they left your book and this is what they took away, and you'd be very unhappy to hear that.
I don't know. That's a hard question for this book, because I feel like I'll just give away everything that happened.
Okay, we'll skip that then. Everyone's gonna have to it's the moral of the story. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that I haven't brought up, or any other questions that someone might have?
Yeah, I'm open to any other questions.
Michael, I'm going to put Michael on the spot because we're going to be publishing Michael Jeffrey Lee's short story collection in the fall, and he's kind enough to have joined us here. His book is going to be called My Worst Ideas. How are you?
I'm good. How's it going?
Good. Do you have questions for Megan?
No, I didn't prepare any yet. I enjoyed the reading a lot. If I think of one in the next few minutes, I'll ask. But congrats, Megan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope to meet you soon.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah, and so we're like I said, Formation of Calcium's on our site. So it's information about Michael's book, and we, as always, are always open for submissions, and policy is really simple. And with that, I think I'll turn it over back to Josh for anything he has to say. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Eva. Eva, thanks for reaching out to me about this. It was really exciting to hear you guys were doing some books by people who could attend book launches. So yeah, it's been a dream to do this. You guys have been one of my favorite presses for a long time. Megan, it's really heartening to hear that one rejection is not the death knell from Spurl. So maybe I will try again someday. But yeah, thank you all for coming out. Like, it's really cool that two small presses who I think are doing work very much in tune with one another, though also exceedingly different. And I do think there is such a thing as a Spurl book, Eva. I think much like a sublunary book, it's a broad definition, but there's something there, and I think Megan fits in very nicely with that. So once again, thanks for coming, everyone. Both books are available on asterismbooks.com, and then of course from our individual press websites. We thank you for coming out on a Saturday. Please share this with friends. We'll put it up on YouTube later, so if anyone you know would love this talk reading extravaganza about two books that feature in Eva's terms, women who know they're right, telling you why they're right in two very, very different, cool ways. Please share this. It'll be up later. Thank you all for coming.